Well, following a comment that we received after a previous video blog entry where we discussed about the difficulties of the role of Constance when comparing it to the Queen of the Night, basically stating that because many people are, I could say, obsessed with the difficulty of the Queen of the Night, mainly based on the height of the notes, because as for the rest of the ornaments and the agilities of the Queen of the Night, it's not as lengthy as deep and as hard to sing as it was the case for Constance's role. That's what was stated on that video, and so I received a very interesting comment now, referring to Osmin, of which, of course, we have not talked about. And I thought that it would be a nice idea to bring another entry to address the difficulties now for not only for Osmin, that's what I had been thinking for the past couple of weeks. Not only Osmin, but trying to put it because you remember in the past we have also built a couple of comparison of roles. We have worked or we have gone through baritone roles, we have gone through mezzos, we have gone through sopranos, through tenors. But truth is that we haven't given the time to talk about the basses. And why not talking about basses when referring to Maestro Mozart, who gave or who built whose legacy is part of the most interesting bass roles in the history of opera. Of course, Constanze Blonde, um, the Queen of the Night, uh, Pamina is there, but there is still La Contessa. There are many female and male roles that are very interesting in the hands of Maestro Mozart, and bass roles are no exception. So, what I am proposing today is that we talk about these three roles that you are seeing now on the screen. We are going to be talking about Osmin, Sarastro, and Don Giovanni, the three of them, of course, from very emblematic operas from Maestro Mozart, Osmin from Minseraglio, Sarastro from the Magic Flute, and Don Giovanni from the opera of the same name. So, my proposal today is that we talk about the three uh, characteristics that we are seeing on the left: the on-stage time, the main challenge, and the dominator role's personality. Why? Because difficulty for a singer is not only a note, because you can always say, oh, there is one of the lowest notes required for the mezzo role in Ulrica, or you are required a very high note for the tenor, or etc., etc., etc. In this case, the very low notes for the bass. But it is not only a low note. It is in the middle of an aria, which is part of a character, which in return also is part of a complete opera. So we need to see it at the three levels. The note per se, in which or what area is that part of, what difficulties are of the area, not only the note, the character itself, how it's been evolving, and that's why we started with the on-stage time, because the on-stage time is very important, even sometimes more important than the area itself. Because, as you can see in our first comparison for Osmin, Sarastro, and Don Giovanni, truth is that the amount of time that Osmin is on stage is very low compared to the duration of the opera and the presence of other characters. Sarastro's presence in the Magic Flute is also very low, but opposite, Don Giovanni has or plays or is on stage for a very significant amount of time. That means that the singer will be absolutely worn out when the opera finishes. He has been on stage singing and singing and participating, and of course, by the end of the opera, you are completely depleted. So, from a perspective of, I would say, uh, depletion of your energies, of course, Don Giovanni is the most difficult role. But also, before we continue with these ones, we all know that we like music. And since we all like music, why don't we listen to a small part of one of the participations of Don Giovanni, which, by the way, illustrates what is going to be our point later, that he also has to sing super fast. Of course, and I know that at this point people are saying, "Oh, but Don Giovanni is not a bass; he's a bass baritone because of this, of this, of this." We have stated in other entries that there is no scientific way of characterizing voices into the tesituras that we already have. This is pretty much the result of of a tradition of classification, because as of science there is nothing. So there is nothing that states that a bass can sing from this note to that note, and that the bass baritone from this note to the other note, and the baritone from note this to note that. That is pretty much a tradition. Our belief in our minds, scientifically, there is nothing. So we adhere to the fact that Don Giovanni is, for a bass voice, of course, a bass voice that needs to be able to sing what we are going to discuss in a second. But let's listen to a part of this video that the user Baritono Guapo put together, and it is very interesting because he builds this video around the interpretation of a good number of singers. So if you want to go ahead and look at this, I am going to put it or to paste the link if you want to watch it complete. And thanks for to the user, the owner of the channel Baritono Guapo, because he put this one together. Let's listen to what is called the Champagne aria from Don Giovanni Fincandalvino, sorry.
Il duetto, chi la follia, chi la demanda, fare ballar, il duetto, fare ballar, chi la follia, fare ballar, chi la demanda, fare ballar, e io che tanto dall'altro canto, e quella pomoreggia, alla velita dopo mattina, una lisina devi aumentar, alla velita una lisina devi aumentar, che casa, qualche ragazza, e quella del alla verità dopo mattina tu la sera devi diventare madre dalla partita il duello tira follia tira la balla quale alla verità dopo mattina tu la sera devi diventare una sera devi diventare una sera devi diventare.
And as you notice, maybe if you already knew this aria before, you know that it is a very lovely, playful part. Tan tararira, tan tararira, tan tararira, tin tiriran, tan tararira, tan tararira, tan tararira, tin tiriran, tan tararara, which is easy for a baritone or a tenor voice, but that would not be the case for a bass voice. We are going to go back to that point again. So going to number two, so we all have discussed item number one. By far, Don Giovanni has the most significant amount of time on stage. So this role really wears out singers. Now let's go to a short comparison of the main challenges of each of these roles. Osmin, my favorite, by the way. Well, maybe Osmin and Don Giovanni at the end, Sarastro. Osmin is a role that requires agilities and a very interesting range of the voice for the bass. Goes to the very lowest note of a bass to a very high note. The very high note is optional, by the way, in the writing of the role. Uh, this really requires a voice that is secure in the top and in the low. The problem there is that when you've been singing often in the low, there is, I will discuss it ahead, maybe in a couple of months, because I want to put it together, maybe as part of the playlist of the essentials for non-singers. It is because of a phenomenon that physical materials have. It is called hysteresis. So when you've been singing low too often, it's difficult to go high. And the other way around is also the truth. When you've been singing high in the high register, going to the low notes can be challenging. The material itself, which are our vocal cords and the tissue, resist to go back. That is what is called the hysteresis in singing. So, for a singer to be required to be using the two extremes of his voice can certainly be challenging. And also, uh, the main participation of Osmin is full of agility. Bass voices, we have also discussed it in the past because of the amount. It also has to do with physics. The amount of effort to move significatively larger vocal cords is more difficult to make them sound lighter. Think of an instrument that is located in the lower range and try to make it play fast. It's not going to work because of the size of the chords. Same happens with the voice. So there are some exceptions, and there are singers who train a lot in order to overcome what is a natural obstacle of bass voices, which is agilities. Therefore, the addition of the two extremes of the voice, the lowest notes, the highest notes, and the agilities make Osmin role very, very, very complicated to sing. But on the other side, very opposite to Osmin, Maestro Mozart gave us Sarastro, which with a role that is perceived as slow. Sarastro always takes his time to explain his ideas, to explain what he's instructing. In his two main areas, which are also very slow paced, people tend to call them boring arias, monotonous, monochromatic, and that is because it is very difficult to convey an idea and to keep the attention of people when you're singing slow. As we heard with Don Giovanni, that is very easy to catch the attention because you have a very sticky melody that is moving fast. But when you're having a melody that takes its time to develop, besides requiring a good breathing technique from the singer, it also needs a way of portraying what we are going to call in the third of our lines, that you are able to convey and to keep that attention to your voice even if it is not making something spectacular or what people can call interesting. Sarastro, as opposed to Osmin, who reaches the two extremes of the tessitura of a bass, Sarastro is mainly for a low voice. So basses who are very comfortable with their low register can find themselves comfortable singing Sarastro, but probably not doing Osmin. As for Don Giovanni, which we have already referred to, that he's usually called a bass baritone because we are unable to really put him in a clearly bass voice. Of course, if you want to compare the Don Giovanni sound to Sarastro, of course, nothing has nothing to do with it, and neither is it that close to Osmin. So, what many baritones who feel comfortable in their low register have done is that they are the ones who go for Don Giovanni, because for deep low bass voices, Don Giovanni can be too high and so they don't go for it. And a standard baritone with problems in the low register may find some difficulties in portraying the adequate sound of Don Giovanni. That's why it is stuck in what is called a bass baritone role for Don Giovanni. Also, we need to mention here that Don Giovanni has many nuances in his participations. We just heard tra la 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 tra la 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 la. But remember that there are other. He also sings, for instance, the duet La ci darem la mano. La ci darem la mano, which it's nothing compared to tra la 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 la. It is the same singer. So the same singer needs to make so many changes in the way he sings, so that all the nuances of what he is doing, he's seducing La Ci darem la mano, he's being playful in his champagne area, he's being challenging in his final scene. All those colors need to be part of the Don Giovanni. So not only the vocal challenges play in regards to the extension, also as and what you need your voice to project. And before we move for the third one, I think that it is a good time now so that we go back to listening to music. And now I would like to invite you to listen to a part of Sarastro, and mainly for that you can listen to the voice of Kurt Moll. Of course, Kurt Moll, a very great bass. And we are about to hear his O Isis Sunto Series. Which, by the way, and before I forget, I wanted to share you that Kurt Moll is one of the few basses that can sing both Osmin and Sarastro. I was just sharing with you earlier that you would hardly find a baritone who can handle two very different roles, as we have discussed. Well, Kurt Moll is one of the few singers who actually can. And now, going back to our table, let's go for item number three, the dominating role personality, because it is not the voice, or what we discussed in line two, is a consequence of what we are about to discuss. Osmin is a mainly comedic role. Even though, of course, he is menacing, even if he's portrayed in a way, in a ridiculous way, in a way similar to what is going to happen in the Magic Flute, to another role, Maestro Mozart in a way did something similar with Osmin. Um, Being comedic, it's really difficult. We have discussed it in the podcast episodes. For a singer to sound funny, to sound attractive, to catch the attention of people, it's kind of difficult if it is not your natural personality. I can assure you that most opera singers, their natural personality is usually very introspective, usually very serious. I do not know many singers who are actually outgoing and super laughing and everything. So for a singer who has this type of personality, to be an Osmin on the stage can be a challenge. Of course, you can say, well, yeah, but that's why you study, that's why you're a professional. Yes, 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 but everything adds to the recipe of difficulty. And so, to sum up, Osmin has a very small amount of time on stage. He's challenging from the agilities required and from the vocal range that is required. And moreover, the personality of the role is comedic with some participations with he needs to appear to be menacing. As for Sarastro, is the most monochromous role of them all. I was sharing with you, he appears a very short amount of time on stage. His two main areas as low, which are many people can perceive as boring, and he has an intensive use of his low register. He needs to appear as serious, reliable, and very, very static. From that perspective, if you have the low notes and you are able to call the attention to people to believe that you are an authority there, you could get away with it. Truth is that not so many bases have been successful in doing that for Sarastro. And let's go now for the final one for our dear Don Giovanni. Don Giovanni, as we discussed earlier, he has many nuances in his voice, and the personality of Don Giovanni is if he needs to appear seductive, he will. La ci darem la mano. If he needs to be playful or intense, we have his champagne area. If he needs to appear so sure of himself, so proud, go for his lengthy final scene. Don Giovanni needs somebody who can identify the psychology of the role, put it into the voice, and still be on stage for a good amount of time. To conclude, if you asked me what is the most difficult role to sing from these three, I would tell you it really depends. Depends not only on what you have on your side, if you have a very nice voice, a very solid bass voice that can reach your lowest notes and your high notes, and you have worked your agilities, Osmin is not going to be challenging. But Sarastro might. You might find trouble with Sarastro, and maybe Don Giovanni will not be a challenge, but Sarastro will. On the other hand, if you're not very secure in your low notes and you have a fair middle and upper register, Don Giovanni will work for you. And maybe Osmin if you skip his lowest note, but Sarastro will be impossible to you. So, what it takes for a singer, I think that first things first, and first things first are that we also, as audience, need to perceive that difficulties come from a number of sources and not only from the height of the notes. And to conclude, why don't we wrap up with a very young singer under the name of Jeremy Harr sharing with us his version on piano for Osmin's aria, which is very, very, very lovely. I think we all like, and in a way, will also remind us to the Giovanni in the way that it is playful. Thank you for joining for this video.
Oh, wie will ich triumphieren, wenn sie euch zugleich spielen, und die Hälfte spielen zu, und die Hälfte spielen zu, streich nur säuberlich und leise, ihr verdammten Haremshäuser, unser Ohr entdeckt euch schon, und der Welt könnte springen, seid ihr euch in Mozart schlägen, und der Haschet euren Lohn, und der Haschet euren Lohn. Schleicht nur säuberlich und leise, ihr verdammten Haremshäuser, unser Ohr entdeckt euch schon, entdeckt euch schon, entdeckt euch schon. Oh, wie will ich triumphieren, wenn sie euch zu Liebe spielen, und die Hälse stieren zu, und die Hälse stieren zu,